Two of the strongest community-driven cryptos, Avalanche and Cardano, both saw massive downside wicks during Friday's sell-off last week, along with the rest of the market. But while those moves look brutal in the short term, they may actually have been setting the stage for something bigger. In today's video, I'm going to break down what these reactions tell us about the market structure, what I'm watching next for both Avalanche and Cardano, and how they could be positioning for the next leg up in this cycle. My name is Paul Sampson. Welcome back to DataDash. I'll start off with Cardano, and you'll see that I had a gray area kind of highlighted all the way back into 2023. This is where we were looking for it to come down at that time frame. Now we did, touch off of the top side of this. There were some key areas down below that could have been met. It was more so like a stink bid type of thing where if you ever wanted to just kind of catch a really great opportunity, if we ever had a flash crash, that's where I would be looking for, okay, at the time. We then got really big moves to the upside over time here. We came up towards our macro 382 level and kind of coasted around this region. And then at these new levels, we generated a few new things down below us, one of which being this volume level sitting at about 35 cents that was at the time untapped ever since we came up to this region. And then, of course, that little box area down below. But regardless of that, this very quick move down to this region came down and tagged that very high level volume level. This was for 6 months of last year. And while that drop last week obviously is not something that many people anticipated, it's just always something that I like to point out when we are at higher areas. After you see these really big moves come into play and people want to buy into something new or get a new entry, it's always one of those things that I'm always advocating for, to see a pullback, right? Wait for those big red days, folks, because we always will get them. You can absolutely set for some of these key regions down below, and they get met obviously in a hurry. So most people probably weren't able to take advantage of this if it was like happening live at that time, because this was just a wick into it. But essentially we've come back to where we were trading at just back in July here anyhow. So with that move here too, what we did is, of course, we've taken out all these lows. So when you're looking at the leverage in the system here, right, everybody that's getting into these new leverage positions up here all have stop losses down below these lows. So you take out everybody there. Anybody with any kind of leverage obviously was wiped out in these moves, because this is over 50%. So even if you had only a 2x leverage position, you were absolutely wiped off the face of the earth with those positions, right? So another piece why I always advocate as well not to put any leverage on altcoins. They just don't need it. They're volatile without them, right? So anyhow, so we came down, we met this major volume level, as well as taking out the lows here. And we've actually maintained a pretty interesting structure here where we've coming up and put in some new highs along the way. We did come back down towards this low. Didn't necessarily go too deep below it, if any. Depends on which exchange you're looking at, however. But this setup that I'm looking at here is very familiar. It really does tend to remind me a little bit of XRP before we got a sizable move to the upside. Of course, nothing's guaranteed in that case, but so far we've got a really nice sweep here. Could we very well come back down and back test some low levels again? Of course, again, now that we're already seeing this big push up, it would be nothing to get a little, cool off, because this is now seeing a 125% push from that wick. So it's just, again, it's always a time to be cautious in these markets, right? So, but for me, the bigger picture here is that as long as we're holding above, honestly, this 50-cent level again, even if we come back down and back test it a bit, I still target a pretty decent move here out of Cardano. And if it is something similar to what we witnessed from XRP, it could be very well a big move up towards this $2.11 region. So a couple areas, that you can't be overlooking is definitely the macro 382. We front ran it just, ever so gently here last year. So that's also 2024's yearly high. So definitely something to be aware of if we got to push higher here. But ultimately, I could see us really getting a move here if things got underway. So that is what I'd be looking for here out of Cardano. Again, bigger picture here. This is the daily time frame. This is not looking at small, ups and downs along the way, but just looking at this as a asset that's been pretty range bound for the best part of a couple years here. And yeah, I think that we have potential to see a move up to these areas here, right? So the big areas to start to see us get above, of course, is our most recent high at $1. And then, like I said, basically, if we're holding above 50 cents, I think that nothing's really broken here at the moment, and we could see that move and that push up stair stepping along the way with potential to see that 211 in the nearish future, midterm, I guess I'd say, weeks and months here. And then what we have for Avalanche is we had a pretty sizable range here. We broke out, had a little back test over it as well. But you'll notice down here, I had an asterisk along this level here, this 1090. All right, and anything with an asterisk on my charts are something that's untapped. So it's a very key level, all right? And again, you basically were floating around this region. There's no guarantee we ever get to it, but if I'm looking and strategizing around, where I'm looking for that fresh entry type of deal, or something I would consider putting a stink bid is what it's called. Again, something that you don't anticipate it getting hit, but if it hits, amazing, right? And you have to almost preset for those things, right? Because again, this is something that just wicked into it. And on top of it, again, just pointing out why and where we bounced from on this asset, right? Again, with the liquidation event that occurred, all the leverage got wiped. Friday, when we dropped down over 70%. So again, anybody with any kind of small leverage position, 2x or more, which is pretty much everything, it knocked out all those positions, okay? But if you were just holding spot, then this would be no different than where we were just trading back in August again. So we are back inside the range, okay? So this is another thing that where we could very well just range around, of course, yet again. Holding above this $17 mark is key, I think, in the more mid to interim here. And then we're looking again now to get back out of this range above $26 for that next move. And over time, I do anticipate us to see these areas met above us, okay? So big one being the 382 to get through. Now, we've already met it on this one. We didn't front run it like we did on Cardano, but that's going to be the next major area if you were to see a big move out of AVAX. Of course, we got $54 to be aware of, but we need to claim and get above, start closing daily candles. You can see where we just wicked above it one time, but $61 is where I'd say to get above on a really big basis. Of course, from where we are right now, it's not to say wait until then to get interested in this asset. Of course, we're trading at $22. It'd be a couple 100%, but we could very well just even push up in this region and not materialize anything. That's what I mean by those. That's like the next major key level to get above, assuming we do get a sizable move to the upside, and then we still have $76 up in this region. And then the big one for me remains $98 for the more mid to long term area on Avalanche. So at the end of the day, folks, volatility like we saw on Friday is a part of every healthy market. I know that it's hard to believe. The key is to learning to recognize what's noise and what's opportunity. Both Avalanche and Cardano continue to build, adapt, and grow their ecosystem through all conditions, and that's what separates strong projects from hype-driven ones. If you'd like to stay on top of these kind of setups and understand the deeper reasoning behind market moves, check out the DataDash Pro Discord over at datadashpro.com. That's where I post all my daily analysis, trade setups, educational breakdowns for members who want to take their strategy to the next level. You also get access to Nick's Dash Report as well. Again, that's at datadashpro.com if you're interested. Thanks again, as always, for tuning in, folks. Stay patient, stay curious. I'll see you all in the next video. And until then, everybody, cheers.